Captain Daehyun stood on the observation deck of Bastion 7, staring out at the stars. He had been doing this job for 30 years now. 30 years of watching the border between human space and the rest of the galaxy. In all that time, he had seen many things. But nothing like what was coming now. The space station hummed quietly around him. It was a massive structure, big enough to hold 5,000 people. But right now, it felt very small. Beyond the transparent walls, he could see the boundary beacons, bright lights that marked where human territory began. Everyone knew what those lights meant. Cross them without permission, and you were asking for trouble. Jiwon walked up behind him. She was young, maybe 25 years old. She worked in communications, and she was good at her job. But today, her face looked worried. "Captain, we just received another message from the Valkyrie fleet," she said. Her voice was quiet. Daehyun turned to look at her. "What did they say this time?" "The same thing as before. They are coming. They say they will take our colonies. They say we cannot stop them." Jiwon paused. "Sir, they are laughing at us." Daehyun nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Valkyrie were like that. They were big, strong, and they thought everyone else was weak. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. Now they wanted human space. "Show me their fleet position," Daehyun said. They walked to the command center together. The room was filled with screens and computers. Officers sat at their stations, monitoring everything that happened in this sector of space. Daehyun looked at the main display. There it was, the Valkyrie fleet. 300 warships all gathered at the edge of human territory. Lieutenant Sujin looked up from her console. She handled weapon systems. "Captain, they are getting closer. They will reach the first beacon in maybe 6 hours." Daehyun studied the screen. 300 ships. That was more than the entire human defense fleet in this sector. The Valkyrie knew this. That was why they were so confident. They thought humans would run away. They thought humans would beg for mercy. They were wrong. Far away on Earth, Ambassador Minji stood before the Galactic Council. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 100 different species sat in curved rows, all watching her. Some looked curious, some looked nervous, a few looked happy. Those ones wanted to see humanity fail. Minji was tired. She had been arguing with the council for weeks now, trying to make them understand, trying to make them help. But the council never helped anyone. They just talked and never did anything. The Valkyrie representative stood up. His name was impossible for humans to pronounce, but everyone called him War Master Threlkor. He was tall, covered in thick armor plates that grew from his own skin. His eyes were red and his teeth were sharp. "The human speaks of territory," Threlkor said, his voice deep and rough. "But territory belongs to the strong. Humans are weak. You have 15 small star systems. We have 300. You have been in space for only 3 centuries. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years." Other council members nodded. Some made sounds of agreement. Minji did not move. She stood straight and tall. She wore a simple gray suit. She carried no weapons, but her eyes were hard. "We have warned you," she said. Her voice was calm but clear. "The Terran shield is our home. We have drawn our line. Do not cross it." Threlkor laughed. It was a horrible sound, like rocks grinding together. Other Valkyrie in the chamber laughed with him. "Or what?" Threlkor said.
"What will you do, little human? Will you ask us nicely to leave? Will you send angry messages?" He laughed again. "We will take your colonies. We will take your worlds, and there is nothing you can do to stop us." Minji looked at him for a long moment.
Then she spoke again. "You have been cautioned. Remember that." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the Valkyrie were still laughing. Back at Earth's orbital command station, Admiral Hyunwoo watched the feed from the council chamber. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. But those eyes were sharp. He had fought in the last war 40 years ago. He had seen what happened when enemies thought humans were weak. "They are not listening," said the officer next to him. "No," Hyunwoo agreed. They never do. Not until it is too late. He opened a secure channel to all defense stations along the border. To Bastion 7 and 50 others like it. To the hidden platforms that floated in the dark between stars. To the ships that waited in silent patrol. This is Admiral Hyunwoo. Final authorization. Defensive Protocol Omega. Activate on my command. Across human space, thousands of officers received the message. They began to prepare. On Bastion 7, Captain Daehyun received his orders. He read them carefully. Then he called his senior staff to the briefing room. The Velkari are coming, he said. They will cross our border within hours. We have been ordered to maintain defensive positions only. We do not fire first. We do not provoke them. But if they cross that line, he pointed at the display showing the boundary beacons. If they cross that line, we show them why humans draw lines in the first place. Sujin nodded. Weapons are ready, sir. Good. Jiwon, send one more message to the Velkari fleet. Tell them this is their last chance. Tell them to turn back now. Jiwon sent the message. They waited. The reply came quickly. On the screen, Threlkor appeared. He was on the bridge of his flagship. Around him, Velkari warriors cheered and laughed. Humans, Threlkor said, still laughing. We are Velkari. We do not turn back. We do not retreat. We take what we want, and we want your worlds. The transmission ended. Daehyun looked at his crew. They looked back at him. No one spoke for a moment. Then Daehyun activated his direct line to Admiral Hyunwoo. Sir, they are not stopping. They have refused our final warning. Hyunwoo's voice came back calm and steady. Understood, Captain. All stations are to hold position. Maintain defensive posture. Do not engage until they cross the third beacon. That is an order. Yes, sir. Daehyun closed the channel. He looked out at the stars again. Out there, 300 Velkari warships were moving forward. Soon, they would reach the beacons. Soon, they would cross the line. Humans had warned them. Humans had given them every chance to turn back. Ambassador Minji had stood before the entire galaxy and told them clearly, do not cross this line. They had laughed. They would not be laughing much longer. The crew of Bastion 7 went to their stations. Across human space, 50,000 personnel did the same. They checked their weapons. They checked their shields. They checked the hidden platforms that no one knew existed except for them. And they waited. The Velkari fleet moved closer. In 6 hours, they would reach the first beacon. In 12 hours, they would reach the second. In 18 hours, they would cross the third and final warning. Then the galaxy would learn something new about humans. Humans only warned you once. The first beacon died at exactly 600 hours. The Velkari warship that destroyed it sent out a victory message across all channels. Other Velkari ships cheered. They thought it was a great achievement. They thought they were showing everyone how strong they were. On Bastion 7, Ensign Kyung watched his sensor display. The young officer's hands moved quickly across his controls. Captain, the first beacon is gone. They just crossed into the outer defense zone. Captain Daehyun nodded. He had expected this. The Velkari could not help themselves. They had to prove how powerful they were. They had to show everyone they were not afraid. Mark the time. Record everything, Daehyun said. Admiral Hyunwoo will want complete documentation. The command center was quiet. Every officer knew what was happening. They had all trained for this moment. Some of them had trained their entire careers for this. Now it was real. Jiwon opened a channel to Earth Command. Bastion 7 to Earth Command. First beacon destroyed. Velkari fleet has entered outer zone. Admiral Hyunwoo's response came immediately. Confirmed. All stations maintain position. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage until they cross the third line. Across the command center, officers exchanged glances. They wanted to fight now. They wanted to defend their territory. But orders were orders. They would wait. In another part of the station, analyst Haeun was studying everything she could find about the Velkari military. She had been doing this for months, ever since the Velkari first threatened human space. Now she gathered her reports and went to brief the captain. Sir, she said, entering his office, I have completed my analysis of Velkari tactics. Daehyun gestured for her to sit. Tell me, Heon pulled up displays on the office screen. The Velkari have won every war they have ever fought, but they have never fought anyone like us. Their strategy is simple. They gather a huge fleet. They attack. They overwhelm the enemy with numbers. They never retreat. They never negotiate once fighting starts. Weaknesses? Daehyun asked. Several. They rely on intimidation. When enemies see their massive fleets, they usually surrender without fighting. The few times species did fight back, the Velkari still won through numbers alone, but Heon paused. They have poor coordination. Each ship commander thinks they are a great warrior. They compete with each other for glory. They do not work well as a team. Daehyun smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Good, that will help. The Velkari fleet moved deeper into human space. They destroyed the automated warning buoys that floated near the first beacon. They broadcast their invasion across all galactic channels. They wanted everyone to watch. They wanted the whole galaxy to see the mighty Velkari crushing the weak humans. On their flagship, War Master Threlkor stood on his command bridge. Around him, his warriors prepared for battle. They sharpened their weapons. They tested their armor. They sang war songs that had been old before humans even discovered fire. How long until we reach the human colony? Threlkor asked. His navigator checked the displays. 3 hours to the second beacon, 6 hours to the final beacon, then 3 more hours to the colony world they call New Jeju. Threlkor nodded. Good. When we take that world, we will make an example of it. The other human colonies will surrender quickly after that. His officers cheered. They believed every word. They had never lost before. Why would they lose now? But one of the younger officers, a Velkari named Korthan, felt something strange. Worry. It was not an emotion Velkari felt often. War Master, the humans have been very quiet. They sent warnings, but now they say nothing. They do nothing. Is this not strange? Threlkor laughed. They are paralyzed with fear. They know they cannot stop us. They are probably evacuating their colonies right now, running away like cowards. Korthan was not convinced, but he said nothing more. Speaking too much could be seen as weakness. And weakness was not tolerated among the Velkari. The human colony of New Jeju was not evacuating. Not yet, but preparations were being made. The colony's 12,000 residents had been briefed. They knew the Velkari were coming. They knew there would be a battle. But they also knew something the Velkari did not. Humanity had been preparing for this for a very long time. The second beacon died 4 hours later. Again, the Velkari celebrated. Again, they broadcast their victory across the galaxy. Other species watched nervously. Some felt sorry for humanity. Some were secretly glad. A few wondered if maybe the Velkari had made a mistake. On Bastion 7, Lieutenant Sujin checked her weapon systems for the 100th time. Everything was ready. The station's defensive batteries were fully charged. The missile tubes were loaded. The targeting computers were online and tracking every Velkari ship. Captain, she said, all weapons show green. We are ready. Daehyun stood at the center of the command deck. Around him, his crew worked at their stations. They were professionals. They were calm. But he could feel the tension in the air. Everyone wanted to act. Everyone wanted to defend their home. Not yet, Daehyun said quietly. Let them come. Let them think they are winning. Jawan received another transmission. This one was from Ambassador Minji. She was back on Earth now, having left the Galactic Council. The message was simple. All diplomatic options have been exhausted. The choice was theirs. Now they will face the consequences. The Velkari fleet reached the second beacon and destroyed it without slowing down. They were in formation now. 300 ships moving together like a great metal cloud. Their engines left trails of light across the darkness. Their weapons were armed and ready. On the flagship, Threlkor looked at his tactical display. Only one more beacon. Then nothing stood between them and the human colony. He would take that world. He would take all the human worlds. And the galaxy would know that the Velkari were supreme. Send a message to the humans, Threlkor ordered. Tell them we are coming. Tell them to prepare for conquest. The message was sent. The response came from Admiral Hyunwoo himself. This is Admiral Hyunwoo of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have crossed 2 boundaries. You have ignored our warnings. You have one final opportunity. Withdraw immediately. This is your last chance. Threlkor laughed so hard that his whole body shook. The old human thinks he can threaten us. Look at our fleet. 300 ships. We are unstoppable. He sent his own message back. We are Velkari. We do not withdraw. We do not retreat. We take what we desire. And we desire your worlds, human. Watch as we take them. On Earth, in the orbital command station, Admiral Hyunwoo sat in his command chair. Officers surrounded him, waiting for orders. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. They have made their choice. All stations prepare for defensive operations. Authorization code Omega-77. Activate all protocols. Across human space, thousands of systems came online. Things that had been sleeping for decades woke up. Things that had been hidden revealed themselves. Things that had been waiting prepared to act. The Valkyrie fleet moved toward the third beacon. They were confident. They were happy. They thought they had already won. Ensign Kyung's sensors suddenly lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. He stared at his display in confusion. Captain, I am getting strange readings. There are objects all around the Valkyrie fleet. I do not understand. They were not there a moment ago. Daehyun smiled. They were always there, Ensign. You just could not see them until now. The third beacon was different from the others. It was bigger, brighter. When the Valkyrie fleet reached it, the beacon activated. It sent out a powerful signal in all directions. And suddenly the Valkyrie could see what had been invisible before. Weapons platforms. Thousands of them. They had been hiding in the darkness, using stealth technology that made them invisible to sensors. Now they were visible. And they surrounded the entire Valkyrie fleet. On the flagship, alarms began to sound. Officers shouted in confusion. The tactical display lit up with red marks. Thousands of red marks. Corthan, the young officer, looked at his commander. War Master, we are surrounded. The humans have been planning this. They have trapped us. For the first time in his life, Threlkor felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Admiral Hyunwoo spoke one word. Execute. The weapons platforms fired first. They had been waiting in the dark for years, some of them for decades. Now they unleashed everything at once. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Torpedoes accelerated toward their targets. The Valkyrie fleet did not have time to react. They had been expecting a battle, but not like this. Not from all sides at once. Not from weapons they had never seen on their sensors. Specialist Jiho sat at his station on Bastion 7. He was responsible for electronic warfare. His job was to make sure the enemy could not communicate, could not coordinate, could not work together. He had been training for this moment for 8 years. Activating silence protocol, Jiho said. His fingers moved across his controls. Now, across human space, every electronic warfare station did the same thing at the same moment. They sent out jamming signals so powerful that they drowned out everything else. The Valkyrie fleet suddenly went blind and deaf. Ships could not talk to each other. Commanders could not give orders. Sensors stopped working properly. On the Valkyrie flagship, Threlkor shouted orders that no one could hear. His communications officer tried to send messages that went nowhere. His navigator could not tell where the other ships were. His tactical officer could not track the human weapons that were destroying his fleet. Fix this, Threlkor roared. Restore communications. I am trying, War Master, the communications officer said. But something is blocking everything. I have never seen jamming this powerful. It is everywhere. Corthan watched the tactical display as it flickered and died. War Master, we need to retreat. We need to get out of this trap. Valkyrie, do not retreat, Threlkor shouted. But even as he said it, he knew they had no choice. They were dying. In the first 10 minutes, 20 ships had been destroyed. 20 ships that had seemed invincible just an hour ago. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the Terran warship Indomitable. She was a career officer, 40 years old, with short black hair and steady hands. Around her, her crew worked with perfect precision. They had trained together for years. They knew exactly what to do. All ships, this is Yuna. Form assault pattern Delta, target the command vessels first. Let us show them what happens when you cross our line. 50 Terran warships dropped out of stealth mode. They had been hiding just like the weapons platforms. Now they appeared behind the Valkyrie fleet, cutting off their escape route. The Valkyrie had 300 ships, but those ships could not work together. They could not coordinate. They could not even see where the other Valkyrie ships were. Each ship was alone, surrounded by enemies, fighting blind. The Terran ships worked together perfectly. Every captain knew where every other captain was. Every ship knew its role. They moved like dancers, like a school of fish, like they were all parts of one mind. Lieutenant Sujin on Bastion 7 finally got her chance. Captain, permission to engage? Daehyun nodded. Permission granted. Fire at will. Bastion 7's weapons opened up. The station was not a ship. It could not move. But it had been built for one purpose, to defend this sector of space. Its weapons were enormous, powerful enough to destroy a capital ship with a single shot. A Valkyrie heavy cruiser made the mistake of coming too close. Sujin locked on target, firing main cannon. The blast lit up space like a small sun. When the light faded, the Valkyrie cruiser was gone. Just debris tumbling through the void. Target destroyed, Sujin reported. She felt no joy in it. This was not about revenge. This was about defense. This was about showing the galaxy that humans meant what they said. The battle raged for hours. The Valkyrie tried to fight back, but they were confused and disorganized. Some ships tried to retreat. Some tried to attack. Some just tried to survive. None of it worked. Corporal Minho waited on the Terran assault carrier Guardian. He commanded a company of Marines. They wore powered armor and carried weapons designed for boarding enemy ships. So far, they had not been needed. But that was about to change. Minho, this is Commander Yuna. We need prisoners. We need information. Can your Marines capture one of their command ships? Yes, ma'am, Minho replied. Which target? Sending you coordinates now. That is War Master Threlkor's flagship. Take it, Minho smiled inside his helmet. Understood. We are on our way! The Guardian accelerated toward the Valkyrie flagship. The big enemy ship was damaged but still fighting. Its shields were down. Its weapons were firing randomly, hitting nothing. It was perfect for a boarding action. Listen up, Minho told his Marines. We are taking that ship. We go in hard and fast. We secure the command deck. We capture their leadership alive if possible. Remember your training. Watch your corners. Stay with your squad. Let us go. The assault shuttles launched from the Guardian. They crossed the space between ships in seconds. Point defense weapons on the Valkyrie ship tried to shoot them down, but Terran countermeasures jammed the targeting systems. The shuttles slammed into the hull and burned through. Minho was first through the breach. Inside the Valkyrie ship, emergency lights flashed red. The atmosphere was thick with smoke. Valkyrie warriors were waiting, but they were not ready for what hit them. Terran Marines in powered armor were faster, stronger, and better trained. The fight was brutal but short. Minho's squad pushed forward deck by deck toward the command bridge. On Bastion 7, Captain Daehyun watched the battle unfold. The tactical display showed Valkyrie ships dying or surrendering. Some were running, trying to escape, but Terran forces surrounded them. There was nowhere to go. Jiwon looked up from her console. Captain, we are receiving surrender signals from multiple Valkyrie ships. They want to negotiate. Tell them to power down all weapons and engines. Tell them to prepare to be boarded. Any ship that does not comply will be destroyed. Across the battlefield, Valkyrie commanders made a choice their people had never made before. They surrendered. One by one, mighty warships that had conquered worlds went dark and waited for their enemies to board them. On the flagship, Threlkor finally understood what had happened. The humans had not been weak. They had been patient. They had not been unprepared. They had been merciful, giving chances that the Valkyrie would never have given, and the Valkyrie had thrown those chances away. The door to his bridge exploded inward. Terran Marines poured through. Threlkor drew his weapon, a massive blade that had been in his family for generations. He roared and charged at the invaders. Minho did not hesitate. His armor made him strong enough to catch the blade with one hand. He twisted it away and hit Threlkor with his other fist. The War Master went down hard. Target secured, Minho reported. We have their commander. Admiral Hyunwoo watched from Earth Command as the battle ended. 6 hours. It had taken only 6 hours to destroy or capture most of the Valkyrie fleet. Of 300 ships, 200 were destroyed, 50 were captured, and only 50 had managed to retreat. Casualties? He asked. Minimal, sir. We lost 4 platforms, 2 fighters, and 1 corvette. Personnel casualties are under 50 wounded, 3 dead. 3 dead. Against an enemy fleet of 300 ships. Hyunwoo felt old and tired. Those 3 deaths weighed on him. Every death did. But he knew it could have been much worse. It would have been much worse if they had not prepared. If they had not drawn their line and defended it. Send a message to the retreating Valkyrie ships, Hyunwoo said. Tell them this, you crossed the line. You were warned. Go back to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans do not make empty threats. The message was sent. The surviving Valkyrie ships ran for home as fast as their engines could carry them. On stations and ships across human space, personnel began to relax. The immediate threat was over. They had won. But there was no celebration. They had defended their home, yes. But people had died. On both sides. That was nothing to celebrate. Captain Daehyun looked out at the debris field where the battle had been. Broken ships, frozen bodies. The cost of war paid by those who had been warned and had not listened. Stand down from battle stations, he ordered. Begin recovery operations. Let us bring everyone home. The Galactic Council had watched everything. Every species had seen the broadcast. They had seen the Valkyrie fleet cross the line. They had seen what happened when you ignored a human warning. Across the galaxy, other aggressive species suddenly became very interested in respecting borders. Species that had been planning their own invasions quietly canceled those plans. The humans had been peaceful. They had been patient. They had warned only once. But when that line was crossed, they had shown no mercy. War Master Threlkor sat in a cell on Bastion 7. His armor was gone. His weapon was gone. His pride was gone. For the first time in his long life, he understood what his enemies had always felt. Helplessness. A human entered the cell. Not a Marine. This was a woman in a simple uniform. She sat down across from him. My name is Dr. Soo-hyun, she said. I'm here to ask you some questions. Dr. Soo-hyun looked at the prisoner across from her. War Master Threlkor was a large being, even sitting down. His armor plates had been removed for medical treatment, revealing scarred skin underneath. He looked at her with red eyes full of confusion and anger. I have nothing to say to you, Threlkor said. That is fine, Soo-hyun replied. I am not here to interrogate you. I am a xenopsychologist. I study how different species think. I want to understand why your people made the choices you made. Threlkor laughed, but it sounded bitter. You want to understand? We are Valkyrie. We are strong. We take what we want. That is all there is to understand. Soo-hyun made notes on her tablet. But you are not strong now. Your fleet is destroyed. Your warriors are prisoners. How do you explain that? The War Master had no answer. He looked away, staring at the wall. In another part of Bastion 7, Captain Yunji was conducting a different kind of interview. She worked in intelligence. Her job was to find out what the Valkyrie had been planning. The prisoner in front of her was Korthan, the young officer who had worried about the trap. You knew something was wrong, Yunji said. I read the communication logs from your ship. You questioned the War Master. You felt that the humans were too quiet. Korthan nodded slowly. Yes, but I was young, inexperienced. Who was I to question a War Master? Tell me what your orders were. What was the plan after you took the first colony? Korthan was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. We were to take the human colonists as slaves. The Valkyrie Empire always takes slaves from conquered worlds. It is our way. We would have worked them until they died. Then we would have moved to the next colony, and the next, until all human space belonged to us. Yunji felt cold inside, but she kept her face calm. I see, and you saw nothing wrong with this? It is what we have always done, Korthan said. Every species we have conquered. It is the way of the strong, or... He paused. It was what I believed. Now I do not know what to believe anymore. The interrogations continued for days. Yunji and her team interviewed hundreds of Valkyrie prisoners. They learned about the Valkyrie Empire, its history, its plans. What they learned was disturbing but valuable. Captain Yunji compiled a report for Admiral Hyunwoo. She stood in his office on Earth presenting her findings. Sir, the Valkyrie were planning a complete conquest of human space. They intended to enslave our populations. They had already divided our colonies among their warrior clans. This was not just an invasion. It was going to be genocide. Hyunwoo read the report carefully. His face grew hard. And what did they expect us to do? Surrender without a fight? Yes, sir. That is exactly what they expected. Every species they have ever faced did exactly that. The Valkyrie would show up with their massive fleets and their enemies would give up rather than fight. The few species that did fight were too divided or too weak to win. The Valkyrie have never faced an enemy like us before. Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. We need to decide what to do with the prisoners. and we need to decide whether to pursue the retreating ships into Velkari space. Captain Daehyun wants to pursue them, Yoonji said. He believes we should strike at their empire while they are weak. Show them they cannot threaten anyone ever again. What do you think? Yoonji considered carefully. I think that would make us like them, sir. We drew a line. They crossed it. We defended our line. If we cross into their space now, we become the invaders. We become what we were fighting against, Hyunwoo nodded. I agree. But we need to send a message. Not just to the Velkari, to everyone. That message began to take shape over the following weeks. First, the trial. War Master Threlkor and his senior commanders were brought before a military tribunal. The proceedings were broadcast across the entire galaxy. Ambassador Minji returned to the Galactic Council, but this time she came with something different. Evidence. Video recordings. Intercepted communications. Everything the Velkari had planned to do to human colonies. The council chamber was silent as the evidence played. Even species that had supported the Velkari looked uncomfortable. Some looked horrified. The plans had been detailed and brutal. When the recordings ended, Minji stood before the council. We warned them, she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. We told them not to cross our line. We gave them every opportunity to turn back. Every species in this chamber heard our warnings. You all watched as the Velkari laughed at us. You watched as they ignored us. Some of you were happy about it. A few council members looked away, embarrassed. The Terran government wants you to understand something, Minji continued. We are a peaceful people. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek empire. We want only to live in peace in our own space. But peace has a price, and that price is strength. The strength to defend what is ours. The strength to stand up when threatened. The strength to do what is necessary when our warnings are ignored. She paused, looking around the chamber at all the different species. We cautioned them once. Only once, that is all you get from humanity. One clear warning. One chance to make the right choice. The Velkari chose war. Now they are gone. Their fleet is destroyed. Their plans are ruined. And their leaders will face justice. The council erupted in discussion. Some species were angry. Some were frightened. Some were quietly relieved. But everyone understood the message. Do not cross the line humans draw. Back on Earth, President Jiyeon addressed both humanity and the galaxy. She was a young president, only 50 years old, but she carried herself with dignity. She stood before cameras that broadcast to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. The Velkari Empire declared war on humanity. They crossed our borders. They ignored our warnings. They planned to enslave our people. We defended ourselves. We did what any sovereign people would do when threatened with extinction. We fought back, and we won. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we did not pursue them into their own space. We did not attack their homeworld. We did not seek revenge beyond our own defense. We stopped at our border, the same border we had drawn before the war, because we are not conquerors. We are defenders. We want only what is ours. Across human space, people watched and nodded. They had been afraid. They had prepared for the worst, but their government had protected them. Their military had defended them, and now they could go back to their lives. To the Velkari Empire, Jiyeon continued, we offer peace. Return our borders. Respect our sovereignty. Agree to never threaten us again. Do this and there will be no more conflict. Refuse and remember what happened to your fleet. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. In his cell, Threlkor watched the broadcast. Dr. Suhyun sat with him, observing his reactions. Your president offers us peace, Threlkor said. After we tried to destroy you, why? Because we are not like you, Suhyun said simply. You conquer because you believe in strength above all else. We defend because we believe in survival and peace. But make no mistake, War Master. If you threaten us again, the response will be the same. Threlkor nodded slowly. For the first time, he was beginning to understand these strange beings called humans. They were not weak. They were not cowards. They were something the Velkari had never encountered before. They were strong, but they chose mercy when they could. They were deadly, but they chose peace when offered. What will happen to me? Threlkor asked. That depends on your people, Suhyun said. If they agree to peace, you and your warriors will be returned home. If they do not, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The Velkari Empire took 3 weeks to respond. 3 weeks of debate and argument among their leadership. They had never surrendered before. They had never made peace as the losing side. It was against everything they believed in. But they had also never faced complete destruction before. The 50 ships that returned home had told the story. 300 ships sent out. Only 50 returned. The rest were gone. And the humans had barely tried. The humans had been waiting, prepared, ready. Finally, the answer came. The Velkari Empire agreed to peace. They would respect human borders. They would not threaten human space. They would accept the return of their warriors. Admiral Hyunwoo read the message and allowed himself a small smile. Prepare to transfer the prisoners and send a message to all border stations. Maintain current alert status. Trust but verify. Ambassador Minji stood before the Galactic Council one more time. This time she had a proposal. New rules for the entire galaxy. Clear borders. Formal warning systems. Proportional response protocols. Let what happened with the Velkari be a lesson for everyone, she said. Respect borders. Heed warnings. Choose peace over war. These principles are not human principles. They are common sense principles. Let us make them the law of this council. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. The Terran Doctrine, as it came to be called, became official policy. Aggression would be met with defensive force. Warnings would be given, but only once. After that, the consequences were on the aggressor. As the prisoners were prepared for transfer back to their empire, Dr. Soo-Yun had one final conversation with War Master Threlkor. What will you do when you return home? She asked. Threlkor thought carefully before answering. I will tell my people the truth. The humans are not weak. They are strong in ways we never understood, and I will tell them something else. Something I learned here. What is that? 5 years had passed since the Velkari crossed the line. The galaxy was a different place now, quieter, more careful. Species that had been planning invasions decided that trade agreements were better ideas. Empires that had been testing borders suddenly became very interested in diplomacy. Admiral Taejun stood on the bridge of the new orbital defense station that orbited Earth. He was younger than Admiral Hyunwoo had been, but he had learned from the best. Hyunwoo had retired 2 years ago, and Taejun had taken his place as Supreme Commander of Terran Defense. Status report, Taejun said to his staff. All border stations report normal conditions. Sir, his communications officer replied. No incidents in any sector. The Velkari have maintained the peace agreement. So have all our neighbors, Taejun nodded. Peace was good. But peace required vigilance. The defense grid was stronger now than it had been 5 years ago. More platforms. More ships. Better technology. Not because humans wanted to conquer anyone, but because humans wanted to make sure they never had to fight again. On Bastion 7, Captain Daehyun had been promoted to sector commander. He now oversaw 50 defense stations instead of just one. The station itself had become famous. It was the place where the Velkari had been stopped, where the line had been held. Jiwon was still with him, now a senior communications officer. She was training new personnel, teaching them what she had learned. Remember, she told a group of young officers, hope for peace but prepare for war. And always give them a chance to choose. One clear warning. That is what we owe to anyone who approaches our border. What they do after that warning is their choice, not ours. The young officers listened carefully. They had all grown up hearing stories about the day the Velkari crossed the line. They knew what happened to species that did not listen to warnings. Lieutenant Sujin had been promoted too. She now commanded one of the new defense stations on the opposite side of human space. But she stayed in contact with Daehyun. They had fought together. That created a bond that distance could not break. Commander Yuna had retired from the military, but she had not stopped serving. She now trained defense forces for other species that had asked humanity for help, species that wanted to learn how to defend themselves the way humans did. She stood in a training facility on a neutral world, watching young officers from a dozen different species practice tactics. The goal is not to start fights, Yuna told them. The goal is to end fights before they begin. You do that by being so well prepared that no one wants to test you, by drawing clear lines, by giving clear warnings, and by being absolutely willing to back up those warnings with action. A young officer from the Thessian Republic raised a hand. But Commander, what if the enemy does not believe our warnings? Then you teach them to believe, Yuna said. Once, you only have to teach them once. After that, everyone believes. Back on Earth, President Jian was meeting with ambassadors from the Galactic Council. The council was different now, stronger. The Terran doctrine had changed how species interacted with each other. Ambassador Minji, older now but still sharp, sat beside the president. "We have received a request," Minji said. "The Norvik Confederation is being threatened by the Kresh Empire. They want human help." "Military help?" Ji-Yon asked. "Yes. They want us to defend them like we defended ourselves." Ji-Yon thought carefully. This was a decision that would affect humanity's future. "What do you recommend?" Minji smiled. "I recommend we help them. But not by fighting their war for them. We teach them. We train them. We help them build their own defenses. Then we stand with them when they draw their line, and if the Kresh are foolish enough to cross it, they learn the same lesson the Velkari learned." "The galaxy is changing," Ji-Yon said. "We are becoming what we never wanted to be. Protectors, defenders, the ones everyone looks to when there is trouble." "Is that such a bad thing?" Minji asked. "We do not seek to rule anyone. We seek only to help them defend themselves. That is honorable work." The decision was made. Humanity would help the Norvik Confederation. Commander Yuna's training program expanded. Admiral Taejun coordinated joint defense exercises, and when the Kresh Empire finally tested the Norvik border, they found something waiting for them. Norvik ships using human tactics, Norvik stations using human technology, and behind them watching a small human fleet, just in case the Kresh received a warning. One clear warning. They looked at the humans. They remembered what happened to the Velkari. They turned around and went home. War avoided without a single shot fired. In the Velkari Empire, things had changed too. Threlkor had kept his word. He had told his people the truth about humans, about strength and mercy, about warnings that should be heeded. Many Velkari had not wanted to listen. But Threlkor was a war master. He had fought the humans. He had learned from them. And slowly his people began to change. The Velkari still valued strength, but they began to understand that strength was not just about conquest. Strength was also about knowing when not to fight, about respecting enemies who gave you chances to walk away. Korthan, the young officer who had survived the battle, had become a diplomat. He traveled to Earth to meet with human officials. It was strange being on the human homeworld, surrounded by the people his empire had tried to destroy. Dr. Soo-hyun met with him. She had continued her work studying alien psychology. She had written several books about the Velkari and how they were changing. "Your people are learning," Soo-hyun said. "That is good. We are trying," Korthan replied. "It is not easy, changing beliefs that are thousands of years old. But we must, because the alternative is extinction. If we had attacked humans again, you would have destroyed us completely. We know this, would we?" Soo-hyun asked. "I am not sure." "We are not conquerors, Korthan. Even now, even knowing what your people planned, we would still prefer peace." "That is what makes you dangerous," Korthan said. "You could destroy us, but you choose not to. That choice is power. Real power. The kind the Velkari never understood." Years passed. The Terran doctrine became accepted across the galaxy. Border disputes were settled through negotiation. When they could not be settled through negotiation, clear lines were drawn. Clear warnings were given, and most of the time those warnings were heeded. The galaxy entered a period of peace unlike anything it had known before, not because everyone suddenly became friends, but because everyone understood the cost of crossing lines that had been clearly drawn. On Bastion 7, a memorial had been erected. It was simple, a wall with names carved into it, the names of the 3 Terran personnel who had died defending human space. And below those names, an inscription: "They were cautioned once." Let that be enough. Ji-Won often brought new officers to see the memorial. She told them the story of what happened. How the Velkari had laughed at human warnings. How they had crossed the line. How they had paid the price. "Remember this," she would tell them. "We do not want to fight. We do not want to kill. We want peace. But peace is not free. Peace requires strength, and strength requires willingness. The willingness to draw a line. The willingness to warn those who approach it, and the willingness to defend it when the warning is ignored." The young officers would nod and remember. Admiral Taejun stood in Earth Command, looking at displays showing all of human space. 15 star systems safe and peaceful, colonies growing, trade flourishing, children being born who would never know war. "Sir, incoming vessel," his communications officer said. Unknown configuration. Approaching the outer marker in Sector 7. Taejun straightened. This happened sometimes. New species encountered humans for the first time. Usually it went well, usually. Hail them. Standard greeting. The message went out. Welcome, traveler. This is Terran space. We mean you no harm. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came quickly. We are explorers from the Dravix Coalition. We did not know this space was claimed. We mean no harm. Understood, Taejun replied. You are welcome to pass through or to stop at one of our stations for resupply and information. But please be aware. The boundaries you see marked are absolute. Do not cross into our core systems without permission. This is your warning and you're welcome. We understand, the Dravix captain replied. Thank you for your clarity. We will respect your borders. Taejun relaxed. Another potential conflict avoided. Because the warning had been clear. Because the boundaries were obvious. Because humans meant what they said. On the Dravix ship, the captain looked at his crew. Make a note. Humans are straightforward. They tell you the rules. Follow the rules and we will be fine. But do not test them. I have heard the stories about what happened to the Velkari. His crew nodded. Everyone had heard those stories. They had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The mighty Velkari, with their 300 ships crossing the human line. And then the silence. 300 ships going to conquer humanity. Only 50 returning home in defeat. The galaxy had learned. Humanity warned you once, only once. After that, you made your choice. And you lived with the consequences. Or you died with them. President Jian, now in her second term, gave a speech on the 5th anniversary of the Velkari War. She stood before a crowd of thousands in the capital, with billions more watching across human space and the galaxy. 5 years ago, we were tested. We had drawn our line.